the mystery no one asks. Imagine waking up one morning to discover a secret ledger hidden beneath governments, banks, and even the global economy itself. A ledger showing that every nation on earth, from the richest to the poorest, owes more money than it could ever hope to repay. But here's the twist no one talks about. If every country owes money, if governments borrow from banks, banks borrow from central banks borrow from markets, and markets borrow from somewhere, then you at the very end of the chain is the creditor. Who is the world actually indebted to? Because someone, somewhere, must be holding the ultimate IOE, or is the entire system built on an illusion? Today, we dive into the story hidden behind every budget deficit, every bailout, every financial crisis, and every national debt clock ticking like a global countdown timer. This is the story of the creditor who may not even exist. Setting the stage how debt became the air every nation breathes. To uncover the mystery of the global creditor, we have to rewind to a world before national debt was normal. There was a time, believe it or not, when countries didn't borrow money. They raised taxes, minted coins, and balanced budgets because there was no other option. But everything changed in the 17th century. Enter the Bank of England, 1694. A private group of lenders offered the British government a deal. We will fund your wars. You will pay us interest. Forever. This single event created the prototype for the modern central bank. It also created something more powerful. The idea that governments could borrow money they didn't have. And that interest could last generations. From here, the system spread like wildfire. France, the US, Germany, and eventually nearly every country adopted some version of centralized borrowing. But as the system grew, a new twist emerged, one that transformed global debt from something real into something manufactured. Origins the moment money stopped being real for centuries. Debt at least had an anchor. Gold, every dollar, pound, and franc was tied to something physical. A promise, a limit. Then came August 15th, 1971. President Richard Nixon announced that the US dollar would no longer be backed by gold, and because the dollar was the world's reserve currency, every nation fell with it. Money became numbers, pieces of paper, digital entries inside banks. Debt was no longer a borrowing of real wealth that became the creation of new money itself. Because here's the truth, most people don't know. When a bank issues a loan, it doesn't take that money from anyone. It creates it, and when governments borrow trillions, the same mechanism applies. This means the world's creditor might not be a person, a country, or an institution at all. It might be the system itself. The rise debt becomes the world's most profitable product. Once nations realized they could borrow without limit, global debt exploded. In 1970, total world debt was under $1 trillion. Today, it's over $315 trillion, more than 3 times global GDP. That means the world owes more money than it produces every single year. But here's the wild part. Despite drowning in debt, governments keep borrowing more. Why? Because the system is designed to force it. Countries borrow to pay interest on old loans. Banks lend because debt creates money. Investors demand government bonds because they're considered safe. Central banks encourage borrowing to stimulate growth. It's a closed loop, a machine, and like any machine, someone profits from it. But it's not who you think. Not a single global overlord. Not a secret family. Not one master creditor. The real power lies in the structure that ensures debts must always grow, never shrink. The breaking point when debt becomes a trap by the early 2000s, the machine began to tremble. Governments depended on borrowing. Corporations depended on borrowing. Citizens depended on borrowing. A house, mortgage, a degree, student loan, a business, credit line. Debt was no longer a tool. It was a foundation. Then came 2008. Banks collapsed under their own inventions. Governments bailed them out using borrowed money. Central banks printed trillions. But here's the part the news never explained. The bailouts didn't actually pay off the debt. They created more of it. The system hit a critical point where the only way to prevent collapse was to increase the very thing causing the collapse. It was like putting out a fire by pouring gasoline on it. The fallout: the world wakes up after 2008. The world faced a new reality. Every major economy from the US to China, from Europe to Africa, are in on permanent deficit spending. Countries borrowed to survive pandemics, wars, recessions, trade shocks, interest payments, political promises, and public expectations. Debt stopped being an emergency measure. It became the operating system. And so the global debt grew faster than ever before. Governments owe money, corporations owe money, people owe money. But the question remains, to whom? Who is on the other side of this giant equation? Failed fixes: why no one can escape the debt machine. Every major economic overhaul attempted in the last century promised to fix debt. Gold standard reforms, austerity measures, budget caps, monetary tightening, stimulus policies, currency resets. And none of them worked, because none of them addressed the core issue. Debt is not a bug in the system. Debt is a system. The modern economy requires constant borrowing to function. If countries stopped borrowing, the global financial system would collapse overnight, which brings us to the final twist. The reveal. So who is the world's ultimate creditor? After all the history, the crises, the policies, and the numbers, here's the truth. The world's creditor is not a single entity. It's everyone and no one at the same time. Government debt is owed to pension funds, banks, citizens, foreign nations, institutions, and central banks. But those central banks create money from nothing, backed by nothing, lent to governments who owe money created by the very institutions they owe it to. It's a loop, a circle, a self-referential system that feeds on itself. In short, the world is in debt to money that doesn't actually exist. Debt is the engine. Interest is the fuel. And the creditor is a mathematical requirement of the system, not a person. Modern parallels numbers that should shock you. Global debt is now over $315 trillion. The US pays over $1 trillion per year just in interest. Japan's debt is over 260% of its GDP. The European Union's total debt is higher than during any war in its history. Developing nations pay more in interest than they spend on healthcare. Every nation borrows. Every nation owes. Every nation pays. And none can escape, because the system doesn't allow escape. 3 takeaways. The truth hidden in plain sight. 1. The global economy runs on ever-expanding debt. Not by accident, but by design. 2. Debt is profitable, so profitable that the system ensures it can never shrink. 3. The creditor: we imagine a single powerful entity, doesn't exist. The real creditor is the structure that forces money to be created as debt. Final warning. As long as money is created through borrowing, as long as interest requires new debt, as long as every crisis is solved by printing more, the world will continue sinking deeper into an ocean of numbers that don't technically exist. The question isn't who is the creditor, it's how long can a system survive when the only way to keep it alive is to keep increasing the very thing that's killing it. Call Tolkien's action. If you found this explanation eye-opening, share this video with someone who still thinks national debt works like household debt. Subscribe for more deep dives into money, power, and the systems shaping our future. And let me know in the comments, do you think the debt machine ever ends? Or does it run until it breaks?